welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I go into uncharted waters, most of the time, sometimes, of my own sanity. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday, month end Thursday. Yes, it was month end, so all spreadsheets and filling things out and getting things ready for billing at work, and oh, my brain is fried. So what better time than to look at a video about money? Oh boy. I have an explanation for this because some of you out there may be wondering why I would pick a TEDx, or actually this is an official TED Talk, by the way, with the title, How to Share Public Money Fairly. I will explain that momentarily, but before then, who is joining me this evening for this journey into no man's land? Septus Wolf, hello. Noah Asensio, hello. Non-Vitae Rex, hello. Kieverdam, hello. Jaeger Pony, hello. Ryan R, hello. Mike R, hello. Brett Ide, hello. Who else? Evil One, hello. Mick Zemzem, hello. Chicago Mike, hello. Jenny Melquist, hello. J2021, hello. Septus Wolf, hello. Deco, hello. Brendan Foster, hello. Sorry, Brandon Foster. Get that right. Bridget, hello. Shell D, hello. Mr. Tickletrunk, hello. Mike Savage, Blarg. Kyle Mack, hello. And I think that's everyone I see. Pissed Off Shih Tzu, hello. All right, so this week, boy, oh boy, when TEDx Dump Day happened, that's the day, or it was a couple of days, where they just drop a whole lot of new videos on there. Boy, I had the pick of the litter. I was like a kid in a candy store. There were videos there about diversity, equity, and inclusion in business leadership, and there was like 50 Shades of Feminism and all types of different things. And then my eyes fell upon this one, and my first instinct was, money? Ugh. Economics? Maybe? No. Nope, moving on. But then I brought myself back, because two reasons. The first reason I have said many, many times on this show. One of my sincere reasons for looking at these talks and these different subjects and so on is, aside from testing my sanity every week, also to learn something, potentially. And so when I look at something that deals with money and potentially economics, which I was told there would be no math, and I'm an English major, so it kind of makes me go, eh. At the same time, that is exactly the kind of area I should occasionally look at to maybe learn something. So that was motivation number one. Motivation number two is the last word in the title. How to share public money fairly. Now, as all thinking adults know, life is not fair. And one person's fairness is another person's injustice. So I am very curious to find out, in whatever our speaker's about to say, how she assesses what is fair. So those are the two reasons I'm clinging on to justify my looking at this versus what you might otherwise expect of me. So let us all bear through this together, and maybe we'll learn something. Tonight's bingo card is bingo card B. B is in bot. That was the currency selected out of the poll put onto Twitter. If you would like to participate in the weekly poll to choose the bingo card for the broadcast, please follow me on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle there on the screen or in the description below. Or if you're listening at home, it's @scribe_light. So there you go. A couple more hellos, and then we'll jump right into it. Roger Reynolds, hello. Old Guy Gamer, hello. And I think those are the only other names I see. Also, if you would please direct your attention at some point to the top of the chat box, there are links provided by Kieverdam to our friends' GoFundMes. Shady Grin, Angry Illinoisian, and his kitten. All of them, their families and or loved ones could really use your help if you happen to have a couple of spare bucks. So please do think about checking that out if you would. But all that being said, let's begin. This one clocks in at 12 minutes. So just around your average TEDx length, although I think it's an actual TED Talk. Or is it a TEDx? I forget now. It really doesn't matter. There's no difference anymore. I'll start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we will proceed.
So,
a needle pulling thread. You guys hear the so? So, a deer, a female deer. I know it's not the lyric, but you know what I mean. Let me know in the chat. Brad Young, hello. All good here, says Jaeger Pony. All right. And Prosaic Dreams in Blue, hello. Sounds good. All right. So
I come from Bosnia.
Okay.
I mean, I live in Sweden now, but you don't need to know my whole life story.
Shucks. I was hoping for a childhood or family anecdote right at the top.
But the story that I do want to share is from my home country.
Okay.
So close to 50% of the land in Bosnia is dedicated to agriculture and farming.
Okay.
So the government decides to support farmers, to set up the budget, to set up the requirements for the people to receive the budget, and then to disperse the funds.
Okay, well, not knowing much about how farm subsidies and everything work in our country, it sounds reasonable, I guess. I mean, or should I say standard? But again, I'm not an economist.
So they do that, and towards the end of the process, they decide to analyze who really received these funds.
Okay.
And they did that, and the Ministry of Agriculture was shocked, because only one group of citizens received 90% of these funds, and those were men.
Men are not a group, they are a demographic. But okay, men received 90% of the funds. Are 90% of the farmers men?
Men working in agriculture.
Yeah, okay. I guess I would again have to ask, what percentage of agricultural workers are men? Is it close to 90%? So
where were the women? Why didn't they have access to the funds?
Well, because they were in the kitchen cooking. I don't know why. Drunken Uncle's in the audience. Well, if Drunken Uncle's in the audience...
Wow-wee! Wow!
Hello, Drunken Uncle. Yeah, I have a special TEDx set aside at some point for Drunken Uncle and I to look at, because it asks the question, what a pineapple taught me, or something like that, about life or something. So, and Shane, hello. Otho May, hello. All right, so I don't know. Where were the women? Were they tending to the children folk?
The Ministry of Agriculture was surprised because they didn't mean to discriminate.
Okay, unless you're going to tell me that some incredibly even keel percentage of farmers are also women, then I'm still waiting for the punchline here.
They didn't mean to discriminate.
Yeah.
They knew there were women working in agriculture, right?
Yeah, right. But what percentage of people working in agriculture were women?
So they went back and analyzed the situation.
Yeah.
And the problem was, well, there were three things.
Okay.
The first thing is...
Oh, the three things. Oh, that's a list. All right. Well, before we get any further into this, because holy cats, I'm intrigued already to find out what the mystery is to why men got all the money. Circling free space just reflexively. Circling a list real quick there. Let's go over the bingo card very briefly for those of you that might not be familiar with it. Also, as if I didn't mention, links to the bingo cards are in the description below. Anecdote that probably never happened. Haven't gotten there yet. Self-vilification or wretchedness. No. Systemic institutional. Well, she's talking about the government. She hasn't said the word systemic or systems yet. We'll wait a bit. Weightless example, not yet. Word salad, not yet. Leaves out vital context. If she doesn't start telling us the sort of census percentages of agricultural workers based on gender, I'm going to circle that one. Collectivizes own demographic, not yet per se. White supremacy, no. Privilege, no. Sales pitch for product or service, no. Plays victim, not yet. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, we'll see. Wage gap, it's implied here, isn't it? I'm going to wait a second. Patriarchy, not yet specifically. Feminism, no. Mind reading assumes motives, we'll see. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, not yet. Marginalized marginalization, new. Argumentative non sequitur, not yet. Childhood or family anecdote, I think she dodged that one. Contradicts own point or argument, Don't know what the argument is yet. Benevolent condescension, no. And microaggressions, unconscious bias, not yet. So far we have a list and free space. And I'll back up a couple of seconds and we'll go forward.
3 things. The first thing is they didn't even know the gender of farmers because they've never done gender analysis before. So actually, they did know the sex disaggregation of cows, but not of people.
Okay, well then, I guess they sort of backwards learned what their percentage makeup of agricultural workers was. So again, were 90% of the agricultural workers men? And if so, then they legitimately received the money, right?
I will let that sink a bit because gender is unimportant.
Gender is unimportant? I mean, in regards to cows or in regards to your story? Because it sure sounds important since that was your opening gambit.
The second issue is that the way they were distributing the funds could possibly not reach women. Why? Because one of the conditions was to get this subsidy was to give out a land ownership certificate. And we know that traditionally women do not own land.
Okay, so again, so you're forgiving the government, it sounds like, that they did not intentionally give money to more men than they did women. It's just that every element of handing out the money to agriculture just happened to go to more men. Okay.
And the second problem was that women didn't even know. Why? Because the information was shared at the forums that they do not participate in.
Do they not participate in them by choice? Or are they not allowed to?
But the story has a happy end because when the ministry realized this, they changed these provisions. And with the help of gender experts from Bosnia, we now see more and more women getting funds every year.
Just because they're women or because they're women in agriculture? Or well, here's the thing. Okay. Again, you haven't answered the question. Now that was all done, what were the existing percentages of male to female agricultural workers? Right? Okay, so if 90% of the funds went to men, well, that means that 10% of the funds went to women, because you've only got 2 options. So women were receiving the funds. Now, if you're going to tell me that there were only 60% of our agricultural workers were men, okay, well then that would be an issue. You haven't said that though. So I have no idea if this is a problem. And if there isn't a problem like that, then they're just giving money to women because they're women. Or have I missed something?
So what is the point of this story?
I am really wondering that myself.
The point is not only that we should have sex disaggregated data on people, not only cows. But it's also that we can budget fair and equitably.
No. Okay. Again, unless you're going to tell me that the 90% of funds went to only 60% of the agricultural workers or something, nothing about what you're talking about so far sounds inequitable. Okay. Thank you, Chicago Mike. What happened to Moose and Squirrel? Chicago Mike, are you making fun of her accent?
Gee, Rocky, where are Boris and Natasha?
That was my best Bullwinkle. It might also be mistaken for Barney the Purple Dinosaur. I'm not quite sure. You tell me.
But we can't just run numbers blindly.
But you're right. We can't just run numbers blindly. So, good gravy. What was the actual percentage of male to female agricultural workers? Was it 90% to 10%, or was it something else?
We need to know the faces of people that we are serving with public funds.
The faces of the people you're serving with okay, so what does that mean? Are you going to go to house and take a photograph of everybody? Are you going to hand deliver each check to each individual and take a picture to make sure you know who got the... Oh boy, How? Okay, even when I try not to pick something that seems so obviously bonkers, I'm still just bowled over.
So this is really the heart of gender responsive budgeting.
Gender responsive budgeting. Okay. Okay. First and foremost, go back to the bingo card. I'm circling wage gap because that is decidedly implied, if not specifically said at this point. Gender responsive budgeting. Budgeting. Circling attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I haven't heard that one before. And equity. She talked about things being equitable, so we got equity on the board too. All right. So far we have a list, free space, attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, wage gap, and diversity, equity and or inclusion. Okay.
Or as I like to think of it, and maybe you too, common sense budgeting.
Oh, gender responsive budgeting is common sense budgeting. Just like feminism just means gender equality, right? Right.
So I'm an economist. I work with public finance, so public finance and budgets. But my specialty is helping governments inject gender perspective in their financial decisions.
How do I pick these things? Good God. I pick something because the title just has a curious word at the end, and somehow straight back into gender studies. A gender perspective, distributing taxpayer money on the basis of genitals. All right.
And budgets.
Yeah.
Okay, so budgets are fairly simple, straightforward, as
they?
it was introduced.
Budgets are fairly straightforward. And then she puts up a chart that looks like a chemistry set. For those of you listening at home, I don't even know how to describe this. It's circles with branches to other circles, and then other. It would take me half an hour to read this and try to parse through it. So if you have a moment, glance at the screen if you can. I don't even know now. This is why I stay away from economics.
And now you're thinking, well, that does not look fairly straightforward.
You are correct. There's nothing literally geometrically straight about any part of that chart, except for maybe the connective lines. Kind of. Thank you, Keeverdam. It's your radar, Scribbles. I know. I swear. Okay. For those of you who are new here or don't know, I only pick these things based on the title and maybe if there's something interesting about the thumbnail. Except in some rare instances, I will never look at the actual capsule, like description of the video or anything else. The times that I sort of can't help it is when they put up a warning that said, this talk does not conform to TEDx's usual standards or something. Other than that, but okay, we're in the thick of it. Here we go.
And it's intentionally done like that because this is how we often imagine the budget to be. So complex, so technocratic, bureaucratic, we don't even want to engage.
That is exactly the reasons why I first shied away from going towards this presentation in the first place, because it implied economics. But I found a whole other reason to be weirded out by it now.
But the reality is very different than that.
Okay.
In fact, all our budgets, being it your own budgets or public budgets or company budgets, go through the 4 logical steps.
Okay.
The first step is, of course, we are calculating our revenues. In the sense of the state, it would be taxes and fees, right?
Right.
The second step is budget approval. After we figure what we will do with the funds, it goes to the approval of the parliament. And then the third step, my personal favorite, is spending or budget execution.
A woman who likes to spend money. Oh, whoops. Sorry.
Ideally, according to priorities, not my personal favorite.
Not your personal favorite to spend according to priorities? What?
And then we go into control and budget oversight. So whether we have actually spent the money as we planned, and also whether we have achieved the objectives. So in the sense of the state, it would be increased level of education, decreased level of poverty. In the sense of the company, it would be profit or income. You see where I'm going.
Yes, I have a very rough understanding of where you're going, and I understand the 30,000 foot level of the budgetary process. Yes, I have either directly or indirectly dealt with budgets of one form or another most of my adult life. Okay, I am with you so far. Now, where do you inject the gender lens?
So what is really wrong with that? It sounds perfectly logical. Well, what is wrong with that is that traditionally, in most of the countries, if not all around the world, we assume when we are planning the budget funds that we are targeting one universal, homogeneous human that will have the same access to funds, the same needs, almost.
If you say so. I mean, not being an economist, not being a person who handles budgets on the scale you're talking about, I suppose. I mean, okay. I am certain that someone in the audience is far more knowledgeable about these things than I am and could be screaming at the top of their mental lungs right now about her either being wrong or me being wrong. I don't know. But I have to take it on faith, at least for the moment, that she knows what she's talking about until she contradicts something that I just can't avoid. So, okay. Yes, we'll go with government, since you're talking about public money. A governmental entity, whether it's federal or otherwise, cannot imagine individual people. It can only imagine the end destination of the funds. I mean, I can't even imagine how much extra levels of bureaucracy would be needed to ensure that the government knows every single individual and their gender who is the recipient of, governmental subsidies. As far as I understand it, most times, and I am simplifying it, I'm sure, the government sets aside money. People have to go apply or register to receive subsidies or help or whatever else, and they either qualify or they don't. And then if they qualify, they receive them, and if they don't, they don't. All right, so what are you saying needs to be done elsewise to prevent the terror of 90% of the farm workers getting 90% of the money? I have to assume.
And then the situation such as this one in Ministry of Agriculture happens. Then we are surprised that our funds didn't really reach everybody.
But they did. Okay, sorry. I know this is really starting to dig into my brain. You have not told us what the actual percentages of male to female agricultural workers were in Bosnia. Okay, if just by an accident of funding, it was discovered that there is this disparity between male and female agricultural workers, or at least an indication thereof, well, great. Then why don't you reverse engineer that to find out, were they distributed unfairly or unevenly? You have not proven that. You haven't given us any evidence to say that your opening example proves the point of the problem you're attempting to solve. Are we going to get that at some point? Please? Because like I say, I'm not an economist, but already I think I've spotted a problem in your argument.
So what I want to also say here, what do we then do about that?
I don't know.
In Ukraine, the government has analyzed close to 300 budget programs.
Ukraine? I think this is recorded before current events, so... Okay, in Ukraine, 300 budget programs.
And when I say budget programs, these are expenditures in health, education, sports, infrastructure, defense.
Defense, yeah, well, that's... I hope they spent plenty on that. But okay, 300 budgetary programs for various aspects of public life and national defense, okay?
Anything you can think of that is funded with public funds.
Yes, okay.
And in every single one of these programs, we have found gender gaps.
Of course you found gender gaps. Are there gender gaps by any chance on the basis of vocation? Is it just because some people choose to do some jobs or go into some industries more than others? Okay, do tell. Where are the gaps coming from? What are we supposed to take from these gaps?
We have found big gender gaps.
Oh.
And these gender gaps were usually on account of women. They didn't have access.
Why didn't they have access? Why?
And why did this happen?
I
It
don't
happened
know.
because finance officers were just doing their job and they were doing it really well.
Then what is... Okay, you are extending the same gap in argumentation from your very first example. You first need to tell us, and using evidence, God forbid, that there is this percentage of men in industry X and this percentage of women. And the percentage of men is this number, and the percentage of women is this number. And the money received by men is outsized compared to the percentage of women. You need to show that first, and you have not done it. I'm not an economist, but you're not... Seriously, I cannot be... I'm an English major. Come on, you're making me look like a genius, and I know I'm not.
They were planning for economic effectiveness, efficiency, value for money. We really love value for money.
So they were doing everything but discriminating on the basis of gender? Oh, no.
Performance budgeting, medium-term, all of these very valid economic objectives, very valid goals, but we really didn't account for the needs of people that we are serving with these funds. And
okay, how do you account for the needs of the people individually? Because what it sounds like you're saying is that women are effectively and inherently more needy than men.
let me illustrate that.
Okay.
So we have analyzed the program from tuberculosis.
Program for tuberculosis. Okay.
So treatment of patients of tuberculosis. And
The treatment of patients with tuberculosis. Apologies for the pause game here. I just want to make sure I am understanding, A, because she does have kind of a thick accent, and B, just as we go, that I know what we're referring to.
you may be now asking, okay, but you need to treat a patient. Why is gender important there?
That is a valid question. Why is gender important there?
But when we have done the analysis, we have actually seen that 70% of the patients of tuberculosis were men. And tuberculosis is a big issue in Ukraine.
So an overwhelming majority of tuberculosis patients in Ukraine are men. That means that a smaller percentage are women. Okay.
And these were men living in remote areas, in rural areas, working in mines.
Yeah.
However, the preventive measures and the way they were designed, they didn't account for it. They were actually targeting those sectors, such as education and health, where women traditionally dominate, and this is fine, but they really didn't account for the needs of these men in the risk groups. And why? Because gender equality was not important in the budget decision.
What does it have to do with gender? What? If there was a woman working in the mines, she would be just as high at risk for tuberculosis as a man. Wait, what? Okay, so in your first example, you wonder, oh my gosh, 90% of the funds went to men. But you don't tell us whether or not there were 90% of workers in agriculture. Now, 70% of the victims of tuberculosis are men. And most of them worked in mines, in dangerous jobs where they're probably breathing in a whole bunch of crap. But they weren't receiving the same care because they were men? Okay, so they didn't account for vocation safety or work safety, not gender safety. Because I don't think only men work in the mines and only women work in education. I mean, unless the Ukraine is ridiculously gender I mean, it could be, I suppose. I keep hearing that there are Nazis there. What?
So what I'm trying to illustrate here
is a disparity in workplace safety?
Is that not only that we need to account for gender equality to achieve our objectives of equality, but we also need to account for it to make more common sense budgetary decisions, more effective and efficient budgets.
It's got nothing to do with gender. The example you just used had nothing to do with gender. It had to do with workplace safety. Okay, well, I mean, unless you are just a supreme sexist, I don't know how else to look at this.
So how do we do that?
I don't know.
It looks equally entertaining, but...
Oh, this is this is a different chart, or at least a modified chart. And you've just inserted the word gender into different places in the... But...
What the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Right?
Yeah, okay, I'm circling word salad. I'm circling weightless example because her first example, primary example in this thing, has not been elaborated on, explained, or otherwise. Yes, I have a new WTF singer. I haven't retired the other one. I just, after recent events, I couldn't help myself but to create a new one. So there you go. All right, so just to review, so far I have, and you know what, I'm also circling systemic institutional, because you talked about parliament, you talked about government, you talked about public funding and business and stuff. Okay, so systemic institutional, weightless example, word salad, a list, free space, attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, wage gap, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's where we're at right now. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Leaves out vital context. You know what? You're correct. You are absolutely correct. Leaves out vital context. She hasn't explained. Her examples are terrible. For trying to make the point she apparently is trying to make, her examples are terrible. Uneven workplace safety measures is not a gendered issue inherently. I don't know, mine safety measures. What has that got to do with the treatment of tuberculosis? Preventative care? Shouldn't that be like a labor and industries kind of thing? I don't know.
Now we also add gender.
Yeah, we just throw it in there. We sprinkle it in, like a dash of salt or something.
So it's a total mess, and we would think, how do we even go about that?
Yeah,
but
how?
Of course, it's not as complex as that, because in the heart of this work is gender analysis.
The heart of this work. Okay, tell me about the work. Gender analysis. Outside of a census, what do you mean?
And what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
So when we are planning as finance officers, any financial or fiscal decision, meaning when we are planning introducing new tax, for example, the core is to analyze how will that influence different groups in a society.
Okay, but I would assume, and again, I don't mean to keep being a broken record here, but I just want to assure everyone I am not an economist. So if I'm an idiot saying these kind of things, it's because I don't know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to analyzing how taxes are going to affect people, it's usually based on class. You can't account for gender because it's irrelevant. Right? I mean, if we impose tax X, how much is this going to affect the poor, the middle class, and the wealthy? Is it fair-ish? Is it balanced? Does it affect one too much over the other? You can't granulate tax decisions down to how is it going to affect a particular gender. Unless there's something inherently gendered about what you're taxing, I guess. I mean, Are we going to go towards the pink tax and like taxing tampons or something?
So will we have our gender gaps increased?
What?
We don't want to do that.
What? Okay, well, give me an example. All right, just please. This all sounds absolutely ridiculous and asinine, but give me an example. Give me an example of a tax decision on a government's part that had a gender component to it that you were involved in, right? Because this is your vocation. You are an expert at this. You said you advised governments on these things. Okay, give me an example. It shouldn't be secret because most times governmental tax expenditures are, oh wait, no, they're not. Never mind. You're talking about the Ukraine? Okay.
Reduced or leave the status quo. So of course we want to reduce them. And I just want to put it here as well. In most of the countries, not all unfortunately, but in a lot of countries around the world, we have a very solid legislative framework for gender equality.
We do? Oh, okay. Where are these countries?
We have commitments, but when it comes to budget and finance,
Yeah.
that's where suddenly the story evaporates.
Why? Why does it evaporate? Why? Because you distribute funds to a particular industry and you're shocked to find out that one gender more than the other is involved in that industry? What if there was like a nursing subsidy, right? Or like you even brought up, an education subsidy. Would you then be shocked? Would you try to solve the problem if there were too many women getting the money? What?
So when it comes to money, it's not really analyzed for a gender impact.
Because it can't be. Again, unless the tax or the subsidy is somehow gender specific, you're going to start marking up money on the basis of gender because you assume someone's gender says they can or cannot function.
So this is really important. And we do this in, as I said, 3 steps. I will take you very fast through these steps, don't worry.
Okay.
So the first step is really to do situation analysis.
Yes.
So in our agriculture example,
Yes.
if we had done situation analysis and if we had known gender gaps in this sector,
Okay, I don't know how many times I have to say this, so I'll just say it this one time. A disparity does not mean inequity. Pardon me, my brain is all over the place. A disparity does not inherently mean an inequity. If there are 90% male agricultural workers and 10% female agricultural workers, there is a disparity there. Does that mean there is an inherent inequity? No. Correlation does not equal causation. You are an economist. You have to know this simple fact. I'm not an economist. And I understand looking at 2 disparate demographic numbers does not mean the answer and the cause is racism or sexism or whatever. Because I am not operating on the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis, but it sure sounds like you are.
we wouldn't have been surprised. We would have known that women do not own land, so we wouldn't give this as a requirement. And we would definitely have known that we need to inform them in a different way.
How many men compared to women are in the agricultural industry in Bosnia? You need to answer that question before anything you've talked about actually becomes some sort of unfair disparity. Why won't you tell us?
So this is the first step. The second step is related to my example with sex desegregation. You will remember from the beginning.
What?
So we really need to know the beneficiaries that we are trying to serve. And now you are thinking this sounds very obvious, but it's not done.
I don't know what's obvious anymore because you haven't explained anything. Okay.
And the third step, of course, is to know the procedures.
What?
How will we give this budget out? Who will have the access? What will be the excluded groups?
Uh-huh.
And that's it. And now I will just share some good news.
Is any of this good news going to contain an active example that I can wrap my brain around at all? Okay, let me take it back. An active example with all of the necessary information.
I think, is that around 80 countries around the world are working with gender budgeting. And please, if you have an interest, just see if your own country is one of them.
I'm not sure I understand gender budgeting. What do you mean? Do you mean giving more money to whatever gender is in the minority of whatever sector you're looking at just because there's fewer of them? Or what? What does it mean?
But when I say they're working with gender budgeting, that does not mean that their whole budget is gender responsive.
Should it be? Shouldn't it be people responsive regardless of gender? I mean, okay, in your Bosnia example, right, there was that one element, that one requirement of having a land ownership. Okay, all right, that is something that could be a barrier, right? An inherent barrier requirement that some people cannot meet. All right, I'll grant you that, just abstractly, all right? But what does that have to do with gender? Just because most men have it and women don't? Well, okay. But if it's unfair just because a lot of people who are farmers don't necessarily have those things, then it doesn't really matter what the gender is, right? It's like a requirement of status or something that some people can't meet. And maybe that's just unfair for people. What does gender have to do with it? And how would you effectively determine the gender of everyone receiving any particular penny of funding?
That would be my dream.
What would be your dream? Sorry.
They're working with gender budgeting. That does not mean that their whole budget is gender responsive. That would be my dream.
Your dream would be that everyone's whole budget would be gender responsive when you haven't even effectively described what gender responsive looks like in a success story.
But my personal hero is Austria. Why?
Okay.
Because they have gender budgeting entrenched in constitution. So that means that in Austria, it cannot happen that you have an investment project that you are doing without considering gender and gender equality.
Is there any possibility you could give us an example from the Austrian government and how they assessed gender prior to distributing the funds? Could you do that, please?
Canada, feminist government, gender balanced cabinet, and they are doing gender budgeting, but they are taking into account needs of indigenous groups.
Oh, now we're into ethnicity, okay, or race. Oh, so we've added a whole new component. Oh, okay. Do you even know what you're talking about? Did you plan out this presentation? Come on.
Of people. So this is also something that we want to do and we have to do.
Okay, so you want to have gender responsive budgeting and you want to have ethnic responsive budgeting as well? Okay, how is that going to work?
Morocco, let me take you to Morocco.
Morocco? Okay.
Morocco is working with gender budgeting for 20 years.
In what fashion?
Indonesia, with the help of the World Bank, has just analyzed their whole budget system to make it more gender responsive. And I need to take you again to Bosnia because I did start with that example.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
Country name, country name, country name, this and this and this and... Oh, God.
Balkan countries are doing fantastic work with the help of UN Women.
How?
So there is a lot of work happening.
What?
And I'm now coming to an end.
Thank God for small favors.
Because you might be now wondering, okay, but what is in it for me, in a sense? You're talking about public budgets, but I work in a company or NGO or I'm self-employed. Doesn't matter.
I guess it all depends on my genitals, I suppose. What's in it for me? That's not what I'm wondering, but you know what? I'm going to circle mind reading assumes motives just on the basis of that one little comment, because right now, yeah. Okay.
So why is it important for us? Because this is our money. These are our budgets. We are filling these budgets. It's not some abstract money out there.
Yes, we, as the people of the nation, not the genders of the nation, you're going to treat people differently in...
So we have the right to demand it to be equitable.
What is equity? In your worldview, what does equity look like? Because so far, you have not given us anything that tells us that anyone has been the victim of inequity.
To be fair, that's one thing. So it is important for the countries, it's important for the companies. Of course, we should ask who is making decisions, whose needs are being satisfied, and also maybe families, but who really has the voice? What?
Good gravy.
Is making decisions?
The government, the elected officials, presumably. The budgetary council. I don't know. You just listed off a whole bunch of countries. Don't you know? Why can't you tell us? You're here to teach us something, right?
It's interesting just to see and then to maybe be surprised as these ministries or not.
What?
So if you are interested, you are literally one click away. And I'm aware this sounds like a sales pitch.
Oh, you know what? It does sound like a sales pitch. And the fact that you said that, I'm going to circle sales pitch. Oh, good God.
But I am selling you the work of many, many gender budgeting experts around the world who have been for years working with these concepts. So you have such a wealth of material from UN Women, IMF, different scholars.
And you couldn't distill down into 12 minutes the basics of what you are talking about?
World Bank, Swedish government, doesn't matter. I will not go into all the...
You might as well. I mean, all you're doing is listing off organizations and nations and just saying that they do this thing, which you've barely even described.
Wealth of materials.
Yeah, wealth.
So it's all out there.
Yeah, it's all out there.
And if we do that...
Do what?
We will have the budgets that will not only lead to gender equality, which is amazing objectives in itself.
Tell me a country that has absolute gender equality. Does Austria have gender equality? You say Austria is like your dream. Okay, so Austria has gender equality. Full stop. Right?
But we will have better, more effective, more efficient, more fair budgets.
How do you know this? What evidence do you have? You've given us nothing.
What's not to like?
What's not to... I don't know what to like versus not like because you haven't explained yourself.
So I hope next time we meet, maybe here again,
no,
this type of gender responsive budgeting will be called budgeting. Thank you.
Where does the school board find them? And why do they send them to me? Okay, I swear to God, I was trying to extend my understanding of something I usually stay away from, I swear. And I'm back into gender nonsense. Okay. This went by quick. It just bewilderment speeds time. All right. Okay. Here's where we are in the bingo card. I'm going to go over it one more time just to make sure I haven't missed anything in all of my insanity. And just to get things out of the way so I don't forget later, I'm going to circle the card twice for 2 WTF instances because I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to do it. Okay, let me, come on, silly paint program, do what I want you to do. There we go. Okay, and then one more circle. No, I don't want it inside the other circle. Come on. There we go. Okay. There, and there. Okay, moving on. Anecdote that probably never happened. Okay, the 2 standout anecdotes that she gave, the Bosnian agricultural disparity and then the Ukrainian tuberculosis disparity. I don't have any reason to think that those things didn't happen, so I can't circle that one. It just, I believe that they happened. Her lack of information or details doesn't make them untrue. Thank you, Keeverdam. Slap the card, too. Yeah, I don't have a slap sound effect, unfortunately. I should probably add that in something. Thank you, Keeverdam. Okay, so self-vilification or wretchedness. No, she never really talked about herself. Collectivize his own demographic. Women. I just because she did. Just women writ large for no particular reason and didn't tell us why this is unfair. White supremacy. She never brought up race, except for the Canadian example, but it really didn't. I don't know if that counts. Privilege. She never said the word, and she had one disparity where the men were the beneficiaries and one disparity where the men were the victims. So there really wasn't a privilege thing since she was focusing mainly on gender, I didn't really get a privilege thing out of that. Plays victim. She never talked about herself like she was put upon by anything or anyone. So I don't know that counts. Patriarchy. If she had lent or leaned on the first example more than she did, maybe. But she also, like I say, the tuberculosis example showed that men were the victims. Even though I don't understand how any of that would have been solved by gender budgeting. That's beside the point. So feminism, likewise, she talked about gender disparity, but she didn't technically lean into one or the other being the foremost recipients. Marginalization. It's implied by those who don't get the funds they need or something, and so on. So I'm gonna circle that one. Just on aggregate. Let's see. Argumentative non sequitur. Argumentative non sequitur. The charts. She puts them up, but she never went over them. She never explained. Well, no. So she put up charts of what she said people think economics looks like, but then she simplified it down. So maybe not. Actually, I'm debating between contradicts own point or argument. Okay, hold on. Sorry, my brain's all over this. I'm going to move on for a second. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about herself or her family. She pointedly avoided that at the beginning. Contradicts own point or argument. She never told us how it works. She never gave us a success story. She just said that Austria does it well, but she never told us how or what the difference is between before they did it and after they did it, or a country that tried it this way and then Austria did it that way. So, yeah, there's the absence of details nuked her whole presentation. Benevolent condescension. I don't mean to double dip, but she really talked to the audience like we're morons. Like, we can't see that there was nothing there in her argument. And that, it's too complicated, or you can go to here for all this information, everything. No, you're the person on the stage. You're the one giving the presentation. You should be able to explain this to us. And not like direct us off to a website or something. So that being the case.
Bingo.
What?
Of course!
So there we go. Our first bingo. And lastly, microaggressions, unconscious bias. Well, actually, she pointedly stayed away from that, and she said governments weren't intending to do this. They just discovered this sort of in the after effect. So she tried to take any sort of intent away from the process, even though she was talking about disparities. But okay, so anyway, that's where I'm at on the card. It is a messy card for a messy presentation. If you have arguments for squares yet to be circled, please put them in the chat now, and be sure to tag me in your comments so I can see that you've done so, and I'll scroll up a little bit. Bridget, argumentative non sequitur, as she said, but gender doesn't matter in the beginning. She had no sarcastic inflection. It was brushed over. That's true. She just said that and never. Yeah. Okay. Legitimate. I agree. I agree. I'm circling that one and saving that there and refreshing that there. Okay. So there we go. Thank you, Bridget. Septus Wolf, isn't wage gap part of feminism? No, well, the gender wage gap is a tenet of the feminist faith, but I'm just talking, wage gap in general is talking about wage disparities in general, just as a wide thing, talking about class divisions and things like that, or talking about a wage gap. It doesn't have to be gendered necessarily, but yeah, so we have that up there. Ryan R., she said the word feminism. Did she? Did she say feminism? Mike R., she said gender equity. Gender equity is synonymous with feminism. Did she actually say feminism, though, the word? Because that's an easy one. Ryan R. says, I'm pretty sure she said it. Well, can anybody corroborate that? Did I miss that somewhere in there? It's possible. But I'll still take on the argument that gender equity is a feminist tenet, essentially. Nothing to see here. She said Canadian feminist government. Oh, did she? Did I miss that part? Oh, well then. Yeah, that would count just on its face. So there you go. And consequently...
Give me a
Bingo.
silly. One
Bingo.
only, please.
Right? Yeah!
we have our second bingo. Second bingo. Double bingo. Okay. So any other squares to be circled? I haven't missed any bingos, have I? And I got one down the middle and okay. Data wasteland. And when you have feminist, you must have patriarchy. Not necessarily. It's not a given. Mentioning one doesn't necessarily mean the other. You know, unless you guys want me to combine the squares together, that'd be something completely different. Check Your Logic says that sounds too much like the blackout. Does it? Well, yeah, I use the dramatic squirrel thing at the front. You know, that's only to prepare people for the grandeur that is the Hunt for Red October quote. But it's nothing like the blackout thing. I'm not going to play the blackout thing because that would dilute it. Anything else? Any other arguments for squares to be circled, guys? I honestly thought this would go much longer as a broadcast than it did, because I thought, at least in part, we'd be diving into a subject that would require a lot more, comment or analysis or pause or digestion, mental digestion on my part. But it was just empty nonsense. I was really trying to find something different. I think somebody before the stream started said this looks like territory Scribe hasn't gone to before outside of Scribe's wheelhouse. And yeah, that was the point. That was the point. Nothing you see here. Patriarchy. Men own all the land. Oh. Ew. I agree.
I had a dog, and his name was...
What?
I had a dog, and his name was...
Bingo!
Of course!
Triple bingo. There we go. And I'm challenged to think that any of the other any other squares will be circled. Anecdote that probably never happened. Yeah, like I say, self-vilification, no. White supremacy, no. And even that mention of Canada doing budgeting on ethnicity, doesn't quite pass the test. Privilege, she never said it. And her examples were balanced as far as victim, and I'm not going to circle privilege for the land ownership thing. Not going to double dip on that one. Plays victim. She never brought up herself really. Childhood to family anecdote, no. Microaggressions, no. I think that's it, guys. I think that might be it. But hey, that's more bingos than I imagined I'd get out of this. I thought it was going to be a very relatively dry governmental / economic presentation, and it wasn't. I really, really thought that I'd go outside the box and get something educational this time, or at least mind expanding. Unfortunately, my radar for TED excellence is on point, as always. But with that, everyone, I'm going to call it here. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this adventure into no man's land. If you enjoyed this, I have a whole channel full of this stuff and other things too. I've done scripted videos in the past. I got a couple of true crime videos down there too if you want to take a look. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me Sunday right here again at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sundays that's right. And of course, you can find me here again next week at the same time for another episode of TED Excellence, where I'll once again delve into some random TED or TEDx talk for information and insanity. I call it infanity. Yes. But anyway, everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you so much for your generosity. It is very much appreciated. Everyone, have a good rest of your Thursday night. Have a good rest of your week and your weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.